you introduce yourself and you ask some questions, and we know about DGNB, but to understand more the approach of the council. It's Europe's largest network sustainable building established network for a sustainable building established in 2007, I think. And it's a non-profit organization. I think that's good to know. And it's participatory association. And you created the globally recognized certificate. And it's a holistic and life cycle oriented approach. But how does it work?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit to the history. So DGNB really was founded in Germany in 2007, a little bit as a response to, I would say, an initiative or different initiatives that wanted to label sustainable building practices in Germany that was not really in line with what most people thought that would be sustainable. Let's call it like this. So, and then we said we want to, do it on our own, and not to say, for example, to use a method that comes from a different country. And what we did at that time is that we had 3 principles that are still our, I would say, USP, and that made us quite strong in our positioning by saying we will have a certification scheme in Germany, which is an instrument to teach people different thinking and an instrument to get money into the right direction. Actually, that's what it's all about. I mean, we give credits, we give a label. What it's about bringing people, project teams together to think of new solutions and to get the money getting into the right directions. That's what certification is about. And we said that we want to have this life cycle approach. And then everybody was like, why life cycle? What does it mean? And then we explained, well, it means we are not only looking at what is happening here, what is happening on site. So we want to make sure that emissions, but also social aspects and the money is regarded over time and over place. So we want to have a global impact, and this is what all this life cycle assessment, even if it is life cycle cost or life cycle environmental life cycle assessment, but also social considerations is about. Secondly, we said we want to make sure that we will see improvements for the environment, for sure. I'm an environmental engineer, so that's my background. But we want to see improvements in the social aspects where we see deficits, and at the same time we want to change the way economy works. And this means looking at cost on a longer perspective, looking at risks which are not yet in sight and which are not yet valuated. So this means, for example, you have to have an assessment of the climate risk that comes to your site. And this means, for example, that you have to consider follow-up cost and not invest into the cheap solutions only. And then the third pillar is that we said, actually, we want to have an openness of the methods and an openness of the solutions being applied to get to the targets. And this is the third pillar, which is like the performance orientation, where we said we will set limit values and maybe target values. It's more, positive speaking, like, yeah, this is the target value. But the way you get there is open. So we say you get a lot of credits when your carbon footprint is below 5 kilograms. We're not telling people to use recycled materials, to use renewable materials. We're not telling them to build less. We say 5 is the target. And this is totally, I mean, these 3 approaches, sustainability, life cycle, and performance orientation was also different from other approaches of certifications and of setting regulations at that time. And it was in line with European developments of standards. the EN standards for sustainability. And this made us a little bit the rookies and a little bit scientific, but at the end, everybody's following. So Braune introduced LCA, LEED introduced LCA. Everybody now does the same, and I think
but
over the time,
it was your idea. No,
no, it was we were very strict altogether behind this idea.
Okay,
yeah.
And a little bit scientific. That's what I wanted to ask as the head of a research project. And with which research institutes do you work together? How do you know what the right way to put the money?
Yeah, so this is a very good question. Actually, my department is called Research and Development. We're doing less research and more development because we think for the most problematic areas, we need more. It's not so much on researching, you know, what is the exact number, the exact way of doing it, you know, but it's more about translating into easy language sometimes, telling different
not easy normal language, I would say, with all
even
your
normal.
shortcuts. I mean, it's unbelievable. You probably don't know what I'm talking about, but it's in my head.
It's all the abbreviations. But this is actually more. That's why I have very often the feeling my department is not, we are looking at research results, but we place them on the market directly, translated into what does it mean. And even if we are correcting, so every 3 to 5 years, we are changing, we have new versions where we say more ambitious, a little bit different methods, and we're adapting things. Now we come up with a very new certification, which will be very difficult to achieve, but it's our 2030 certificate, where we say now we're telling ourselves where we want to be at in 2030, which is far enough away, but close enough. And so what this project is all about is that we really say, now we have 6 years, we want to get there, we want the market to be there, we want all, I mean, let's call it a wish, but we want to, it will be very without compromises, by saying this is what we want to achieve in the next 6 years, like a buildable, a vision that can be built.
Okay, but how does this certificate, especially the new one that's really hard to achieve, how does it pay off for the constructor, for the industry?
Yeah, so actually this is always being asked. So because you have to invest time, I mean, most of the changes compared to normal building is that that the building owner or the investor should give more time to the clever people working on the projects. That's what most of the certificate is about, like saying, have you, please take a chance, recalculate, maybe you get to a lower value, but this time in normal building practices is not given. You have like one shot, you have to do it, you have like, 100 other projects, and then, people don't get the time to optimize. And our scheme is to optimize, and what
the planning, so like
planning.
A sustainable planning for the future. So
what you get out actually is, if you really want an optimized instrument, an optimized project, I mean, this does not pay off, but at the end, you have on the one hand side lower risk, which is one of the main reasons, a better documentation, so lower risk in, you don't have, for example, hazardous substances in your building. What is the most money-consuming thing in the existing building stock? it's hazardous substances that we have to get rid of today, because in the 80s and 90s, we did so much still wrong, although knowing it. So people are totally aware of, if I order a certified building, I'm getting this risk off. Secondly, I have somebody who looks at climate changes on that side. So how is climate change, might it adapt my building? It's also risks of, if you have more flexible areas, you have lower void rates. So you have higher payoffs of the building. So these risks are usually coming with such sustainable buildings. And on the other hand side, you have, of course, that's our promise, lower costs. So if you invest into more energy efficiency and renewable energy, you have, of course, lower follow-up costs, but you also have lower follow-up costs when it comes to water and other media, and also on maintenance costs. So it's I would say typical, and additionally, of course, all the environmental aspects of, you know, doing good for biodiversity and attracting people.
Water consumption, probably.
Water consumption, but also to attract talents. So today, I think it's also part of especially the commercial sector, that if you build, you know, you want to attract people to work for you, you cannot come with whatever building or whatever, you know, this is your desk, I don't care. But you have to also show that you're not just you know, that you're just not saying I'm a sustainable company, but the building is like the business card.
Okay, and these certificates are, I mean, they are not mandatory, but is there any thought of, I don't know, to make it mandatory on a federal level in Germany, or even?
Yeah, so the trend actually is, since we are working with the building ministry since it's our foundation, the trend is that it is still a voluntary scheme. It is very aligned to the federal voluntary scheme for federal buildings. So it's very similar. It's minor differences, but anyways, it's from my perspective, it's all the same. For federal buildings, it is sort of mandatory, but as an organization, today we have like 10,000 certified objects, 10,000 experts that we trained as well. But our goal is, of course, to make it mandatory. I mean, that's if it's mandatory, and then we can say, I'm doing something else. I have 100 ideas that I could do better in my life than saving the world. But
please do,
yeah. No, but what I mean is, people sometimes come and say, you know, but if that's mandatory, then, you know, your organization, what are you doing then? And I'm like, then it's the goal. It's great. Then everybody's just doing it. And I'm super fan of, because the voluntary, you know, changing the market by voluntary initiatives is very slow and very time consuming. And if everything is always questioned, like, you know, the survival on Earth
yes.
and put onto the market, I don't think that's the right, I would say, position of political leaders.
Okay, and two short questions. You just mentioned it. Education is very important for you and your association. So you educate. Who do you educate?
Yeah, so education is very important. So to understand, we are an organization totally public, totally private funded. So 1/3 of our income is member fees, 1/3 is certification fees, and 1/3 is our academy, like trainings that are being paid. This is very important, that it's not just one thing and then you're doing whatever your member says, or you're putting low certification limit values to, you know, to secure the income to the association. But the qualification is super important. One of the, I would say, important sentence our former board president said was, we have to get the sustainability from the heads into the hands. But of course, it has to be in the heads first. So people have to be trained in new ways of tackling these challenges. And once they are trained, we also see that we have a higher political goal for such initiatives. So we are proposing, for example, LCA since whatever, to be in part of the German energy law. But they always said, you know, there's not enough people trained. And then we said, okay, now we have like thousands of people trained, and like, okay, now we can think about putting a list on the energy agency, whatever, and then you know, things happen. But so the training is very important. In the past, we trained a lot on the building sector, like architects, engineers, and so on. And now we train a lot of people on the investor and management side. So banks and real estate companies who want to improve their portfolios. And this is actually now nearly half. Okay. So we have both demand and the demand side and the Angebotsseite. Huh? Supply,
sorry.
Yeah. So it's not just the supply side pushing for, oh, we could do it, but now it's also the demand side that is being trained in reading and setting up climate action roadmaps for specific buildings.
Mm-hmm. So, and the last question, because we should have a longer coffee break, and then I think we can talk to you in person, because you have a little bit of time left. So you did a remark before here about renovating. So rethink demolishing and I forgot the name, but so Architects for Future, for example, it's a very interesting group of young architects and building experts. They try to change the mindset and rethink demolishing and reuse instead of rebuild. So what do you think about that? And is this somehow a subject?
Yeah, totally. So actually, maybe it was a response to what the market did in the past. So since we have European partners in Denmark, in Switzerland, as we saw, in Denmark and Switzerland, Austria, Spain, Croatia, and it's very similar that when people think about sustainable buildings, usually people start with a new construction, because then it's like, oh, I do something good, I do something new, I want to make it very good. So we did a lot of work. We trained a lot of people. We certified. Most of the certificates go into were handed over to new construction, because there was such a big pressure. So, but on the other hand side, it is a response to, if I build new, then it really has to be sustainable. Now we see more and more certificates as well for the optimization of buildings. So when it's really about, it's not about investing into renovation, but as we have seen in Germany in the last winter, we saved 25% of our energy.
So it's possible.
It's possible. Change is possible. So, and this is where we now see a lot of investments and also capacities going into the optimization of buildings. And the next step, of course, is to say, now I want to renovate, longer lifetimes and so on. For this, the initiatives like Stop Demolishing, for example, in Germany, you are allowed to demolish without a permit.
And it doesn't cost anything.
You don't need a permit. You just say, I'm demolishing it. You tell it to the authorities. You're not asking for, you just tell it. And of course, this is totally nonsense.
Yes.
totally nonsense. And therefore, it's very important to have such groups like Architects for Future saying demolishment, a moratorium. So stop demolishing now, because this is totally crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what comes next is like a project like Circular House or a resource pass. So to think of houses or buildings in the city as mining, so as archives. So this is the thoughts that's coming next.
And actually, this is not a thought from us, but although I'm a total environmentalist, but I'm also a fan of the European Commission and the president, who has a clear idea of how to change actually how we live and how we have the economies in Europe. And this is so simple, as it said, we want to be the first climate neutral continent. I mean, the target is there. We just had to get there. We want to be the circular continent. We can learn from the Dutch experiences. We want to be resilient, and having such a social at the same time, of course, social, but having such easy translatable targets from the very top. And this goes since Ursula von der Leyen she has changed a lot. Since then, a lot of very good initiatives came from the Commission, and all countries were following up, and we're running behind. And this is very important. And for example, we developed a resource passport, which is like the energy passport just for resources. It's on one page, but we have a very small writing. It's but anyways, these initiatives, I could say, of course, DGNB invented, but it's not, of course, our invention, but it's a reaction to an overarching idea, which is also translated, for example, in the levels framework and in the EU taxonomy, by saying these are the main topics that we have to take care of. It's 6 or 7. If you combine it, biodiversity should be in levels, and for example, but anyways, it's like very simple messages. And now it's up to us all together to identify the methods on the one hand side, but to immediately invest into the good solutions so that we get as fast as possible to these targets. And the targets, from my perspective, are clear: totally circular, net zero, and at the same time leaving no one behind.